Hi, we are here to talk about the microbiome today, and I've got two nutritionists with me, so double the trouble. We have Paige Britton, an NTP,
Hello.
and Cerise Morris, another NTP, and of course I'm Dr. Oubre. We're here in Austin, Texas, and we're going to be talking all about the microbiome. So the microbiome has become a household term and frequently discussed in news articles and things, and it's becoming more well known. But I think the majority of people out there still don't even know what it is or what it's about. So the title of this presentation is called Microbiome Who, What is Gut Health All About? And we're going to talk about that. So our first section is, what is the microbiome? And why don't we let one of the nutritionists tell us, what is the microbiome? Paige, help us out.
Well, it is a bunch of organisms that live inside of us.
Yeah.
A lot, quite a few.
And so inside of us being not really in between your liver and kidneys, it's between this is a medical thing, but between the mouth and the anus. So between the mouth and the anus, where food enters and where food exits, is where all of the microbes live, because that's where there's lots of calories and opportunity and space. We're not really creatures that have a lot of microorganisms in between our tissues. That's called an infection, not inside your intestinal tract. So yes, anywhere from mouth to anus, that includes your teeth. Your teeth have a microbiome, right?
They do.
So how many microorganisms do we have, Cerise?
There are trillions.
How do you know that? Does it say it in our presentation?
It does. It says it right there. So think of like New York City. You can see that picture on the iPad. Just all those people. It's way more than that.
Yeah.
So 60% of your poop is bacteria, and 99% of the bacteria doesn't even breathe like oxygen. They're anaerobic.
I actually did not know that 60% of my poop was bacteria. I was kind of fascinated to learn that.
Yeah, pretty gnarly.
It makes sense why it stinks, right?
Yes.
I mean, bad breath is basically just bad bacteria growing and
That's true.
releasing their smells. Bacteria that live without oxygen are notoriously stinky bacteria, and there's not a lot of oxygen. Your colon doesn't breathe, so there's not a lot of oxygen in there other than the oxygen your cells are consuming. And the other point with the New York City is I brought up the New York City picture because there's so much diversity in New York City. I mean, just looking at this photo, I see Olaf. I see Mediterranean people. I see there's Elmo, all kinds of things in just a New York City screenshot. So the idea is that we have trillions and trillions of bacteria and microorganisms in our bowels, and each person's microbiome is basically like a fingerprint. It's unique to that individual. There are some commonalities that we expect in people's microbiome, but it's pretty unique to each person. They're even trying to use it in forensics. I don't know if y'all have heard of this, where like you can tell if someone's been at the crime based on their microbiome analysis.
I've not heard of
That's
that.
the future. We're not looking at DNA, we're not looking at fingerprints. Now we're looking at like, did you toot in this room? There's evidence that you've been here.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. They'll probably find more men than women when it gets there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Paige, more on what is the microbiome? What is this genes all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting to think. So human DNA, we have on our nice iPad here. So 25,000 genes. That sounds like a lot, sure. But then we look at bacteria DNA. 232,000.
Million.
So,
Million. Yes.
Million.
So there's 4 extra zeros from the bacterial DNA. And the point there is that the idea is that there's more bacterial DNA than human DNA, and we would not be as complex organisms if we did not have the bacteria helping us digest our food and break down toxins. It's a symbiotic relationship. We die if we do not have a microbiome. We cannot live. I compared it because it's hard to think about numbers that big. They're kind of mind-blowing. So I looked up population of countries that we might have an idea of. And so the British Virgin Islands, tiny little island, right? 30,000 people. So that's how many human genes you have, about 30,000. And the population of the United States is 331 million. So basically, humans are the British Virgin Islands, and the bacteria is the United States of America, with nuclear warheads and all kinds of stuff. So I have a picture of how tiny the Virgin Islands are compared to the Dominican Republic, Cuba, all that. I mean, the island doesn't even show up in the map. It's just a giant star on top of the islands. So the bacteria serve a large role. Before I jump to that, I like to point out that humans are garbage disposals. You can put anything down our gullet and we will turn it into energy. And that is a unique property. You can't feed lions Pop-Tarts, right? They will die if you feed them Pop-Tarts. I haven't done the experiment, but I think they'll eat you while you're feeding them Pop-Tarts, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea that humans have such a complex microbiome that you can shove anything down our throat and we will actually convert it to energy. We may not live our fullest, but we'll at least burn the energy that we can. We may be gassy, stinky creatures, but I don't know where I can. So who wants to tell us about the plant microbiome?
Well,
Cerise will.
Yes.
I'm going to say. So a plant actually has several different microbiomes around it. The leaves, the stems themselves have a microbiome. The root system is going to have a specific microbiome, and then the soil that the plant is thriving in is going to have a microbiome. When the plant is not thriving, it typically, just like with us, is a sign that the soil microbiome is off balance. And so we know how to, well, I don't know because I am definitely not a green thumb, but there are people out there I hear that know how to fix the microbiome of plants so that they can thrive. So
yeah. It's incredible. It makes sense when you look at a plant and the plant is dying, it's withering in this Texas heat. You know, okay, the plant needs water. And the leaves don't need the water. The roots need the water. It's pretty obvious to us. But when we look at humans and say they have a rash on their skin, the dermatologist is focused on the skin, trying to put water on the leaves, and it doesn't work. So in our world, in the functional medicine world, if you have a rash on your skin, it probably means something's wrong in the root system. Either there's too many bugs, too many grubs eating the soil up. Maybe there's not enough nitrogen, there's not enough micronutrients, maybe there's not enough water. So this is the functional medicine idea that majority of illness begins in the gut and ends in the gut. And so we spend in our practice a lot of time restoring the gut. And I think a lot of functional medicine practices miss that. It is not easy to restore the gut. And we're going to talk about how in future videos, but this is the basics of it. So next we're going to get into how does my microbiome help me? And this is the grand overview, so we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details. And so what are functions of the microbiome that we have here? Literally this could go on forever, but I've got 5 things.
Yeah, I mean, mental health is huge.
It sounds bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Your mood is dependent on your gut health?
Yes.
yeah,
It's wild.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Insane.
I'm not talking about just being hangry either.
I mean, that itself is a mood, so
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah. So anything from anxiety to depression, getting as deep as that. Look at the gut first.
Yeah. One of the tests we do is an organic acid test, and there's a marker called HPHPA. Literally, it's just spelled out HPHPA. And it's made by an organism called Clostridia, and it's significantly linked to people with schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. So no one's done the research to like reverse HPHPA and see if it reverses schizophrenia, but it's so closely linked to this HPHPA, and it has nothing to do with the brain, everything to do with the gut. There's no Clostridia in the brain, it's in the gut. It's interesting that a gut microbe can make a component that can make you crazy. Schizophrenic. I shouldn't say crazy, that's bad. So it can also promote skin health, helps digest food, protects against toxins. That is wild to think about, that we can't adequately detoxify without our microbes. Yeah. And then of course, we have it listed here that it boosts the immune system. We actually kind of look at it as it suppresses the immune system when you've got bad bugs overgrowing and stuff. So this is a little more of a complicated diagram. Suresh, you want to kind of walk us through the 1 through 8 points in here, just to mention them.
So different ways that the microbiome can help in the body. It's going to protect against pathogens. So what you're seeing there is sort of like a tight junction on the lining of your gut. And so anytime that junction starts to open up a little bit, that's what we call leaky gut. Then of course it helps
But before you go there, so the idea there is that in the intestinal lining, when you swallow food, you want that food to come out the other side. You don't want it leaking inside you, right? You have a barrier. Just like you have bacteria on the inside of and eating the food, you don't want that bacteria on the inside. That's how, or inside your tissue. That's called an infection. So that barrier is the critical part. And with a broken microbiome, you can't protect yourself against pathogens, and you have the infamous leaky gut, as Cerise mentioned.
Yes.
Next.
And then it synthesizes the vitamins, so it makes the nutrients available, and it can help with immune system development.
So on the vitamin front, there's literally vitamins that we eat that we cannot use, and these bacteria activate it for us in order to make it useful. Once again, a synergistic combo. Good?
All right, and then promotion of intestinal angiogenesis.
And what is that?
So that's like, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I remember is that it's the creation of more new blood vessels and blood supply.
Correct.
In the intestines.
Correct. So if you've got, basically the idea there is that foreign organisms, it's a competition inside our bowels for the food, for the calories, right? The organisms want to survive. They don't want us to die. They want us to keep feeding them. So they don't really want to kill us. They just want to slow us down so they get more of the nutrients.
Yes.
And so by squeezing off and strangulating our blood vessels, they survive and thrive. Remember, a lot of them don't like oxygen. So if they cut off the blood supply, they can live more, and the blood supply stops stealing nutrients. So by having a fixed microbiome, it actually promotes angiogenesis and healing and repair and blah, blah, blah.
Yes. And then goes into the promotion of fat storage, so making sure that...
Which sounds like a bad thing, right?
Yeah, wait a second.
So, to think about it, an unhealthy person that's super skinny, that's considered broken microbiome, not enough calories, maldigestion, malnutrition. That's unhealthy. So, no, none of us want to be overweight, but having a functional microbiome means you're actually absorbing your fats and able to utilize your fats. There's many fat-soluble vitamins that if you're not absorbing your fats, you're not absorbing your fat-soluble vitamins.
Yes.
We'll just skip over number 5.
Oh, okay, sure. And then short-chain fatty acid production by fermentation of dietary fiber, so that's what gives us our energy. And then modulation of the central nervous system in the gut as well.
The short-chain fatty acid part is pretty neat. As humans, we can't metabolize fiber at all. We eat fiber. You should be eating fiber. Most of us should be eating fiber. And over 25 grams a day, preferably more. So if you don't know how much fiber you're eating, then you might want to do a count one day. But the bacteria in our bowels actually ferment that fiber into beneficial components that we then can use. We cannot use fiber. If we eat fiber and have no bacteria, we just poop it out, basically. So the bacteria actually convert it into shorter chain fatty acids. Fiber is a long chain fatty acid. And these short chain fatty acids actually benefit us. They feed our intestinal cells. They repair broken brain. Like dementia, one of the key pieces in dementia is short chain fatty acids. There are some bad bacteria that make bad short chain fatty acids. So that's another example of a broken microbiome can cause disease instead of health, right? Now, this diagram did not have detoxifies on it, so I added number 8, detoxifies, because we as humans have limited DNA and can't break down everything that we're exposed to nowadays. So our microbiome works as kind of a pass off back and forth to the liver. When the liver's, it's like a hot potato. The liver goes, I don't know what to do with this, dump it in the bile. Then it gets down to the bile. The bacteria say, okay, I'll digest for you if you keep feeding me, right? And then breaks it down, goes back to the liver until ultimately it's able to be detoxified and removed from the body. So we talked about how all it can help, and I kind of squeezed in some how can it hurt me. So let's go into more detail about how does my microbiome hurt me. Well, first and foremost, all of those things we just mentioned are not, right?
Yeah.
So we'll go backwards. It undoes detoxification. Not only does a broken microbiome not help you detoxify, it can literally retoxify you, right? Paige, why don't you help us understand some of the ones it's hurting us on?
Yeah, so let's see. Synthesis of vitamins kind of makes sense, right? So if we literally don't have the right bugs in there, we cannot make specifically vitamin K and B12's in there too. Guess how many things B12 is involved with? A lot.
Millions.
Yeah, so that one's huge. Immune system, I mean, goodness, it's just kind of like common sense, right?
Well, it's common sense to us. 70% of the immune system lives in the intestines, in our GALT system, gut-associated lymphatic tissue, and it's our customs department for the body. It's why children put things in their mouth to explore their environment, because our immune system, I mean, it is kind of in the skin, but it's not actually touching things out in the world. Our gut is the way we touch the world and study our environment, which is why, despite to all the parents out there like trying to stop their kids from putting things in their mouth, it's just a natural instinct to put things in our mouth to assess our environment. There's actually a study that looked at what do they call the pacifiers, the noonie or whatever, where it studied parents that if the child dropped the noonie, they would like bleach it with some sort of white before giving it back to the kid, versus the parents that just like gave it back to the kid.
Stick it in their mouth.
Yeah, exactly. The natural cleaning method, and they were able to show that kids that did not get the bleached pacifier had less asthma, less eczema, less chronic conditions, which is wild. So lick the ground every now and then. We have a rule in my house that if the kids drop the food, you just don't look for a while until they eat it.
Yeah. If you can beat the dog, you can have it.
Exactly.
That's fair.
Anything else of mention on here, Paige?
Yeah, I mean, the one that speaks to me, I really see in a lot of clients too, is just the central nervous system. I really see that just so often. Anything that is disrupted here, the vagus nerve going up, more neurons going up than there is down.
That's a wild fact. Yeah, there
crazy.
are more neurons in the gut than in the brain. So this whole gut-brain axis, if you're not familiar with it, get familiar with it, because it's a big term. It's a big deal.
So I really think the gut is our first brain.
Yep.
Not our second.
And when I'm hungry, it's definitely the first brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Cerise, what are some other ways that my microbiome can hurt me, specifically overgrowth of the wrong bugs?
Yes, so overgrowth of certain wrong bugs can be pretty detrimental to your microbiome. So Klebsiella being autoimmunity and alcohol, and those two things can be affected.
So what Klebsiella can do in the alcohol world is Klebsiella can actually turn carbohydrates into alcohol. Just like drinking it. Drinking it's way more fun than when Klebsiella produces it. So we frequently see patients that can't tolerate alcohol. They're brain fog, they're tired, those kinds of things. It could be because you're literally drunk all day, not necessarily drunk, but have enough alcohol running through your system that your alcohol is always making this hangover byproduct of alcohol, and nobody likes a hangover. So when Klebsiella is making it all day long, you feel sick. Klebsiella is our public enemy number one. It's very common to see autoimmune patients with it overgrown, and it's a bad player.
That's wild. And if that much alcohol is going through all the time, then liver's focused on that and not other detoxification.
Correct.
So.
And then there's Clostridia, which can of course be aggressive diarrhea and even death.
C. diff. It's not a fun way to die. Don't put that in the obituary.
No. And then Candida, Paige.
Yeah,
Paige
Candida.
Still.
Yeah, full disclosure. I am in my first round of biocidin, fighting that off right now. And I mean, it's one of those things I feel like a lot of people have that don't know it because it doesn't present itself like, when you do a Google search of Candida, all those crazy pictures and stuff that comes up. It's multiple other things. So inflammation is kind of the overview.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then of course mold. We don't want mold anywhere near us, but you can develop rash and autoimmunity and even cancer from black molds.
Yeah. And one of the things that's unusual, and I don't know that there's any research proving this, we've proven it clinically that mold can actually grow inside your intestines. This we learned pretty early on when we were treating mold back in 2018, 2019. I had a patient that was living in mold, and we did an organic acids test, and his mold markers were really, really high. And then he started on biocidin, our kind of gut protocol to treat mold and other bugs. And he was really struggling with it. So he didn't think it was working. And I said, it is. And he said it isn't. So we went back and forth. Finally, I said, fine, redo the test while you're on the treatment. And it was quite incredible. His levels were, he's still to this day, one of the highest I've ever seen on mold markers. And then while on biocidin, his markers were totally normal. So naturally, he thought, I'm done. So he stops the treatment, and I don't agree. And I say, well, if you want to do that, then retest. So 4 weeks after he stops the treatment, he redoes the test. and they're back to normal. Or back to his previous really, really, really high. And so the answer there was that we didn't do it long enough, we didn't finish the treatment, got to go back in and kill it. And those are markers specific to mold. So we know mold can grow in the gut because the treatment I was using is gut only, it has no absorption. So it wasn't mold in his sinuses, it wasn't mold anywhere, it was in his gut, which is wild.
It's crazy.
Okay, what are some more things that overgrowth can cause?
Let's see. One that I deal with a lot in practice would be decreased stomach acid. We see that a lot. So, decreased stomach acid, we see that show up sometimes as heartburn or reflux. It sounds counterintuitive, but
yeah, it sounds backwards, and it is backwards to what conventional medicine is telling people, right? We have too much stomach acid, so you should neutralize the stomach acid.
Yeah, so Tums is the
Yeah,
answer.
Meprazole and Zantac and all that. And I've done videos specific to heartburn, reflux, so we won't go into that. But if you want to know more about low stomach acid and how that actually works, go check out those videos on YouTube.
That's great. What else? Gas, so bloating, that's huge as well. We often, just think, oh, I ate too much, or, but no, there's a reason. There's some kind of gut bug eating and releasing that byproduct. So we've got to figure that out.
Constipation.
Like it's one of the most common symptoms we see is the bacteria and fungi, they want to eat as long as possible. They want as much time with their food as possible. So they slow down your transit from mouth to anus so that they have more time to consume nutrients.
Most people don't know what constipation is, though. So they'll say, oh yeah, every 3 days. No, that's constipation.
Yeah.
We will definitely...
Got to take the trash out every day.
Every day.
That's what I tell people.
Every day.
And if it's not every day, that's okay. We've got tools and herbs and supplements that we can use to keep the trash moving out. Because if you didn't take out your trash from your house that often, especially if you cooked salmon or anything, and like the skin's in the trash, oh, good Lord. So imagine what your intestines smell like when you eat the salmon. And then it gets brewed and fermented with bacteria.
There's a visual. So.
Putrefaction of proteins.
Yeah.
Fun. So inflammation, all kinds of terrible things. The microbiome is kind of the root of all evil. Now there are other evils in this world, toxins and Lyme and stuff, but the majority of our patients, if you fix their gut, they feel 60-80% better already.
Absolutely.
So in the next video, we're going to go into a little more depth of how do I test my gut health, because there's a lot of false tests out there. There's a lot of fake tests that lead you astray. We're going to help guide you to the tests that actually matter, the ones we use here in our practice, and ones you can get your hands on. So hopefully you enjoyed this first section of Microbiome Who or What, and we'll see you in the next video on how to test. Bye.